Thanks everyone for being here today. This is the webinar, How We Reset, Leading SE Teams Through Market Shifts. Thanks to Navatic for getting us here today. Let's kick it off with an introduction. So I'm going to hand it off to each of our panelists. Please let us know where you are, what your role is, and what is the one AI tool that you're using the most today. Let's start with Shannon.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I'm Shannon DeCarmo. I work with Versapay as a senior solutions engineer. I've been here almost 5 years. I would say the one that has basically changed everything is Cowork. We instituted Cowork for Copilot, so a little bit different, but I feel like it's a very, very strong to the actual Claude product. But it's allowed me to just change my whole working process. And I'm in it every day, all day. So that would be my number one.
You're going to need to tell us more about that as we get into the conversation. Michael,
Absolutely.
Let's go to you next.
Yeah, hi everybody. Michael Amaturo, former head of pre-sales and partnerships at experience.com, going off and doing the fractional pre-sales leadership role. And my go-to tool, which has been just phenomenal and proven itself, is also Claude because of the three layers of it: chat, co-work, and code. I use all of them all of the time. And my team is also encouraged to do that as well.
Wow, great. I think you're going to have even more takes as you go and see lots of different parts of the world of pre-sales from a fractional perspective. Jonathan, how about you?
Thanks for that. Hey, everyone. My name is Jonathan Paredes. I am a solutions consultant over at Dropbox. I was previously in Chicago, but just made the move to Southern California about a week ago. And I used at work professionally, I use ChatGPT. Honestly, we have an enterprise account, and it's honestly tied to also our internal systems. So I use it as essentially kind of a knowledge base, basically. But personally, I use Claude. I love Claude. It's funny because I use it for stock advice and things of that nature. So it's kind of become my personal assistant. But yeah, it's a great tool.
We're having a lot of love for Claude today. So let's get into the meat of the discussion. Guys, we've already been talking about AI here, but it's a topic that has been talked about to death to some degree. What is the one AI conversation that you are tired of having?
I'm going to say it's not really like, are you using AI, right? It's how you're using it. And people are still using it as like a Google tool, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm just asking it questions. I'm asking it, instead of going to, Slack and asking a question, although we still get a lot of that, they just use it to ask questions. And I just feel like they're missing out on so much. I think that's changing that mindset is something we really need to work on, but it's also a way of like, you have to show them how, right? Show them all the examples of what they can do. And then they can, kind of light bulb moment, be like, oh, can I do this? Can I do this? So I'd say for me, I think that's the biggest one. It's not about it's how are you using it?
Yeah, I'll echo that because what I wrote down in my notes immediately came to mind was, instead of asking, what's your prompt? People should be asking, what's your workflow? The prompt is the basic, and the anti-prompt message is everywhere, at least in the newsletters and LinkedIn and articles. It's saying everyone should move away from just using it as a chatbot. But I think the practicality of it is challenging for organizations and individuals. And so it's just going to take some time with the examples, as you said, Shannon, to just get us doing it.
Yeah. For me, I kind of struggled with this one. And funny enough, during my drive, I listened to an episode where the topic really resonated with me. But for me, it's the whole efficiency thing, the whole conversation around efficiency, where it's like AI, that's the whole point of AI, right? But the whole conversation around it's going to make you faster, and essentially, I don't know. For me, it kind of just removes the human aspect out of things, where it's like all AI, it's going to summarize things, it's going to do draft emails and stuff like that, right? But I think instead of having that conversation, it's more about how it makes you more prepared, right? At the end of the day, SCs aren't measured on how quickly we draft up an email. It's more about how prepared you show up to a meeting, and I think that's where that conversation is more. It's more valuable for me as an SCI, specifically.
It's funny that you say that, Jonathan, because I literally this morning had a conversation with one of our leaders, and I was saying, okay, how can we help transition some of these tools that we built and get people using them? And, right, and how are we going to create that business case? And he challenged me and said, okay, all of these things sound great, but are they saving time? Right? Like, are we winning deals because we're coming across with, better decks, more information, catering towards them? But is it taking the same amount of time? It's just being used in different places. And I was like, now I got to go throw that into my business case and see.
Exactly. That was actually one of the points in the conversation where he said, we're probably spending just as much time, building all these tools and agents and all these different things, right? But now, I can walk into a meeting 15 minutes before it and be prepared.
There
Like
you
I
go.
took hours to research, right? So I think overall it's just making us better advisors. But it's just, to me, that was just such a light bulb, right? Where it's like, yeah, that just resonated with me so much.
I think this is
Yeah.
something that we're all facing. We have tools that are being given to us by leaders, or if you're a leader, you're rolling out new tools. How do you get over that adoption hurdle? What causes a new workflow or tool to actually stick?
I think there's two, I mean, this was one of the prompts that we had for ourselves, and I thought about this adoption, like how do you make it stick? For my experience, it's been two things. One is there a specific output that we're going toward? Are we trying to create a task tracker that we're going to use because we've been tracking using spreadsheets or something else? Is it a briefing that we want to do before every sales call that we're all kind of trying to do on our own? Is it even a sales team revenue tracker to see how everybody's doing in a leaderboard fashion instead of trying to do that report in HubSpot? So the specific output has helped, but also uncovering, and I think we talked about this last time, about uncovering ideas from the group. So finding self-generated ideas that are maybe jointly driven because we've had a discussion about it in a group setting, but generated by an individual in the team that says, oh, well, that's something that we could all use.
Mhm.
That certainly has helped as well.
But the one thing that I think we're struggling with now is that, we went through this everybody's tool crazy, right? Every department, they all have their own tools. And guess what every tool comes with? It comes with its own AI. And so then they're all excited about it because, we all do those sales pitches, right? So they told us all about this great AI, all these features, but then it doesn't give the whole story. It only gives the story for that tool. And so now the question is, oh, well, I want to integrate everything else. So now, like for us, like our Salesforce team is getting bombarded because every tool, right? That's where everything lives. They want Salesforce to push all of this stuff out. And we're like, okay, it's one thing if you're pushing it out, but now they wanted to push it back in. And then,
Right.
so what I'm trying to do is say, okay, let's step back. Let's meet people where they work, right? Let's pick 3, most 4 tools, and we figure out what information should be fed in between those and which ones really have access to update anything. I think that the updating is the key. You shouldn't really be updating, but being able to consolidate in something like Cowork that has MCPs to all of the different tools. So it's one place that they can go in and they can ask questions and it can pull from all of the different tools. So pushing people more towards that than this fancy AI add-on that they had to pay for with these tools that they bought.
Like a
Yeah.
strategic overview of how these tools are interacting. That's a great
Yeah.
idea. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
There is a bit of a flavor of the day here, isn't there? Because every team wants to adopt a tool. And I've seen this. Pre-sales teams want to adopt pre-sales AI tools. Let's say RevOps teams want to adopt a RevOps AI tool. Marketing team wants to adopt a marketing AI tool. How do you actually recognize when there's a real improvement to be had here, or whether we're just kind of pursuing short-term initiatives?
I don't think anybody's wrong in wanting to adopt their tools. I think we go through periods of the big pitches, one tool can't do it all. And then you kind of go back to, yeah, I want a tool that can do it all. I want a one-stop shop. Um, it's trying to figure out how you can drive them to say, okay, what am I getting out of this tool? And could I get that from another one? Or do I just need to integrate with that tool to be able to bring information in? So I don't think people are wrong in wanting all the tools, because I think a lot of tools are catering towards, your RevOps or your SE team, or even your professional services teams, right? But I think it's just stepping back and again, just looking at what the value is that you're getting from each of them.
You've all talked about Claude, right? It can kind of do a lot of things. Is there
Mhm.
an
Yeah.
example that someone has seen here of something that does go in above and beyond and justifies the use of a specialized tool
Besides Claude.
besides Claude?
I mean, I'll tell you what I'm paying for is Whisper Flow. And I know there's been a lot of, I've seen so many of their ads in different newsletters, and the ability to cleanly speak to the computer and get that to type instead of, me doing it by hand, in certain cases has been a big help. And because it does save time in terms of if you really want a stream of consciousness interaction with your prompting, with your writing, your first draft anyway, um, it definitely does save that time. And on the other hand, it's not something that was enterprise wide. It was something that I paid for on my own. Um, for me, it was the valuable tool to have outside of Claude.
Yeah,
I'd say, go ahead, Jonathan, go. Yeah.
I was gonna say, yeah, I just because we had ChatGPT kind of from the beginning of this whole this gold rush, right? And we have the enterprise license, and it's connected to, like I said, our internal systems. That's kind of what I stick to. And every once in a while, I'll look at other tools, and I do get just curious about other things, right? But at the end of the day, it's like just because we have it, I built so many different projects and skills and things of that nature. A couple of weeks ago, I worked with the marketing team, and they asked me to put together a Novatic. And so I created it. And then, the project manager asked me, how do I get the engagement for like the previous week? And I was like, oh, I can just send it to you, right? And I sat there and I said, no, I can actually build something, right? So I
Yeah.
used the Novatic MC. Yeah, I used the Novatic MCP. I used ChatGPT, and I created I think it's an automation. So like every Monday morning, it slacks me, and then I just forward her the report. So and I was like, I started looking at like different things like Copilot and Codex, and I was like, no, let me just keep it simple, like, and yeah, no, it works perfectly fine. So
Wait,
it's
that's fascinating. Can you run us through that one more time? So the initial ask, what you did to build, and then what's
Mhm.
the output? This is like a great practical example and probably something we could all be learning from to find out these little automations we can create ourselves.
Yeah, no, 100%. So a couple, and I think Shannon, you might have been, not sure if you got the Novatic challenge, where it's the
Yeah.
MCP server, right? So connected it to ChatGPT. It's funny because at first it wasn't working, and I'm pretty sure it was just a permissions issue that we had, and then it got approved. But after that, I started messing with it, and it was right around that same time I got asked to create this Novatic. Um, and then she later on was like, "This is great." I sent her all the engagement and all the analytics that comes with it directly from the Novatic website, but obviously manual. And then she said, "Is there any way I can get this data on a weekly basis?" In my mind, I was like, "I'll just flag it to you." But then I was like, "No, like, let me see if I can build something else." So I asked ChatGPT, I was like, "How can I build this report? Have it sent to me or her?"
Nice.
And it literally laid it all out. It gave me options. It was like there was an easy way, like kind of like a midway, and then like a really hard way, right? And I was like, let me do the easy way. And so I connected it to Slack, and from there it just kind of took off. So every Monday morning that report gets sent to me, I send it to her, and and it took me maybe 10 or 15 minutes to set that up. It was super quick.
Did you tell this person that it's an AI report, or are you still taking credit for it?
No, no, no. It's definitely, yeah. I told her, I was like, let me actually build this report. Funny enough, it in Slack it does say generated by ChatGPT, so it's coming from the boss upstairs, I guess, at that point. Yeah.
How much verification do you do of the report itself? I mean, have you gotten to the point where you can just blindly trust it, or are you always checking?
So at first, yeah. So at first, I kind of fine tuned it. There was some accounts in there that I know are coming from some of our internal testing measures. And so I went in there and said, hey, remove this domain, remove that. But I got it to the point where it's accurate to the way it can be, right? But yeah, no, you definitely have to kind of fine tune it and make sure it's not throwing you random numbers or anything like that.
I'm so excited to I have actually time blocked on my calendar tomorrow and to dig into the skills. One of the things that I started teaching Claude is that whenever I do my demo overviews or I'm putting together a presentation, it actually now prompts me and says, do you want me to build out the Novatic modals and notes for this? Because I've been doing all of my presentations using Novatic, so copying PowerPoint screens in and then kind of integrating that with my click through demos. But what I'm really excited about now is to be able to say, go build that using the new skills that they've introduced, Novatic has introduced. So that's on my, I'll let you go. Maybe next time we meet, we can talk about how that worked. But excited to be able to do that. So that's like talking about like those integrations and those tools. Like, I don't think there's one tool that can replace everything. I think there's key tools. It's how those tools are now going to integrate and making sure that you're not integrating too many is key.
Let's talk about consolidation and picking the right tools for your team. Are you three actively looking for more tools, or is it more of trying to figure out what the right optimizations and connections are today? And how's that looking at the moment?
I'm looking to add licenses for existing tools. So one of them is the one for Salesforce and Slack, right? Building that integration tighter. And then things like Launchpad, which, like, Jonathan, that just like that report, I made a note about this. I'm starting that report after, right? But having Launchpad, it's great because it will send an email when somebody's looked at it. It'll tell you all of the stats, but it sends it to, that one AE. But what if, we pull that report and send it to, the sales leaders and show, where the value is, without them even having to ask, right? Pushing that.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, I think for us, it's, I think, kind of on that same boat, Shannon, where it's like we're like I said, I use Claude personally, and I think right now we're going through the process of getting it approved, internally. But that's something that I do want to kind of introduce, right? Once again, to bring up the podcast, but on the way here, there was an SC that, talked about they do RFPs using a cloud skill. And according to him, he said it's the best one. Like, it's, for me, it completely fills out my RFPs in, just a few minutes. He tried out some other tools, but it's just the one that works for him. And I was like, okay, that's something that actually applies to me. I really want to try that, right? So now I'm thinking I should probably pay for an enterprise license and then, obviously use it when it gets approved. But it's like little things like that, right? I'm looking for workflows that apply to me, not necessarily just going out there and blindly testing all these things, because it's, unfortunately, it's just a waste of time at that point.
I'll send you my skill. I built one for that too.
Perfect. I appreciate that.
So as you guys are looking at this, everyone's talking. You as leaders are talking. ICs are talking. How are you keeping your teams grounded when there's pressure in the industry or from internal leadership to adopt X tool, Y tool, new thing, always be showing more AI? What's it like to keep the teams grounded?
I mean, I think it's just asking, it's a question that's come up all the time now, which is, does this tool do something that our current stack can't do? Because a lot of the time you can use your existing resources, your existing tooling, or even your existing processes to do what you're trying to do. I think there's a lot of cool factor involved in being attracted to certain tools. But if you can say, nah, if with a little bit of work, we can use Lovable for this internal tooling instead of an external task manager, let's do that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Like, if you're going to bring a tool, make sure that you can justify it and say, this is what I do now, but try and find a way to do that same thing with the existing tool set instead of just looking at the new flashy little thing that just came out, that only focuses on this. And then talk to your peers, because I found one time, I found out on the side that, there was a new tool that somebody else was already pushing forward that had something I needed too. And I think that gets lost a lot. Companies don't share the tools that they have onboarded across different departments. And then all of a
Mhm.
sudden you're like, wait, what? We have Scribe? I didn't know we had Scribe, things like that. So I think that there just has to be a better way of looking at sharing, what is out there already.
That's a
Yeah.
good lunch and learn topic, just to say, just to keep,
Yeah.
pitching the lunch and learns, to have everybody kind of go around and show what tools you're using, what you've discovered. It's a good idea.
And I love that one, Michael. That's a really good one.
Yeah, no, I work with all kinds of different teams, and I remember maybe just a few months ago, I felt very overwhelmed because everybody was using so many different things, and I got to a point where I asked myself, should I be using these tools as well? So I started looking into them, and we had Claude Code at one point, so I got it all set up, but I got to a point where I was like, I should just use what I'm using currently and just get really good at that tool. But yeah, but back to your question, Matthew, it was we're not really getting any sort of like pressure or anything like that. It's more of like, here are these tools, try them out, use what's best for you. But it's funny because I had to kind of like learn to get into that groove of using these tools for my personal benefit and also just to do research and things of that nature. But I remember one time it was kind of like a light bulb. I was in a meeting with my manager. We were going over a deal, and he was asking me these questions about it. And I was like, I actually have no idea. And then he jumped into ChatGPT and literally was like, Jonathan is working on a deal with a legal firm. He's running into these issues. Can you give me some guidance? And in 2 seconds, ChatGPT spit out all these recommendations. And I sat there going, why didn't I think about that? And now it's like second nature. Now I'm just in
Yeah.
ChatGPT all day asking questions. So it really took that kind of learning moment for me to, essentially take it in like that. So it's, yeah,
I think that
I think if
emphasizes we're still early, right?
100%.
We are
Yep.
not at that point where everyone has adopted the tool to kind of supplement your own thinking and research, because you can do it with everything. You can do it with
Mhm.
a deal prep. You can do it with challenges you're running into. We've been having some interviews for a new position that we're trying to hire for. And my expectation is almost like you should be able to answer pretty basic questions about what we do here, because you could
Yeah.
just put it into Chat GPT ahead of time and it'll give you a pretty good answer, and then use
Yeah.
that as your launch pad. Shannon, you were jumping
Yeah.
in.
Yeah, I was going to say, the pressure of using AI, the leader and I were talking about that this morning too. Like, how are we going to measure it? How are we going to push people to use it? Because, we're looking at how are we able to shift headcount because of, these tools to take some relief off of some of the SE needs. But one of the things that he did is they built a skill to find the efficiency of everybody on the professional services team. So if you're not adopting AI, your boss is,
Hmm.
and you better watch out,
And
because
they're
they're
using
going to
it to
now
measure
come
you.
back and they're using it to measure you, and they're coming back and they're saying, what did you do with this gap, right? Whereas before they'd have to scrape the reports and they're not going to be on top of all things, but now they can just run a report and be like, you had this task, it took 8 hours, you didn't put notes in as to why, or you put very limited notes. I don't see anything in here that justifies that. um or even a new leader that was coming in, I was talking to her and she's like, oh, I have to go listen to calls on the sales team to just kind of get to know their personalities, what I can help mentor them with. And I'm like, did you just say you're going to listen to calls? And I built a skill, and I don't want to take away the importance of, we only get the transcript, right? When you load all of these things into Claude, you're only getting the transcript, right? So I included in the skill, give me call outs of and areas where I should go watch the call. And it did. And so that's important, because silence when evaluating an AE or salesperson is just as important as what they said. Because if they're not talking and they're not contributing to the call, that's a red flag too.
Mhm.
So helping also leaders evaluate teams, and again, If you're not using it, your leader is, and you better kind of just watch, right?
Yeah, you're gonna get left behind. You're gonna get left
Yeah,
behind.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about security, because the organizations that we work for obviously take client confidentiality and what we're doing very seriously. How do you draw the line on what your team should and shouldn't put into AI tools? And how do you decide what vendors to work with from a trust perspective, especially when it comes to enterprise grade organizations?
Sanitize it.
Hmm.
Sanitize it before you put it in there, randomize it, and make sure that it's not getting in there, even when you have enterprise agreements with training turned off, just to be on the safe side.
Yeah. No, we have guidelines that we're supposed to follow and all these different things. But yeah, Michael, same here. Like if I'm plugging in, a transcript or something of that nature, like I'm scrubbing out names and names or company names and things of that nature. But 100%, yeah, sanitize as much as possible. We definitely don't want any sort of PII or any sort of customer data going into those prompts.
Yeah, I think that that's why they didn't go with, just Claude. They went with Copilot, Claude for
Hmm.
Copilot, Cowork for Copilot, because at least they could take advantage of their permissions and all the security features that Microsoft already had in place for us. It was funny because when we got this connected to Slack, we have help channels where people put tickets in. And so a lot of times, like the Salesforce help channels are very interesting. And so I was talking to the product owner for Salesforce, and I was like, oh, now let's go through and let's like see who is the biggest culprit of, putting tickets in when it's really just, knowledge and not doing things right. Well, it wouldn't give me the information around who the biggest culprit is, because it says you're not the manager. So there are things that IT thought about that I never thought about, so that people can't use it against others. So I thought that was pretty smart. So you just got to make sure that you've got people behind it that are watching out for the security of all of these tools.
Yeah. Well, to your point, that report that I told you guys about, the MCP one, at first I had it sent to that project manager, but it would break. And it was because we have so many different permission settings where you can't send a report directly to somebody. So that's why I had to
Ah,
change it. I had to change it to have it sent to me every Monday, and then I forward it to her on Slack. So it is one more step, but at the end of the day, it's like it's taking security pretty heavily, right? So yeah, that's funny.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm struggling with getting something to save to SharePoint in my
Mm,
skill.
I
It like
bet.
worked, and then all of a sudden it stopped working, and I was like, "What happened?" So it's now like I have to copy it from my OneDrive up to the SharePoint drive. So I just put an IT ticket in for that because I'm like, "Come on, how are we going to share this? This is getting a little ridiculous."
I mean, that really
So
does sound like
hopefully we
something
can
an
get.
agent should be doing for you, right?
100%.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah, yep. And it tries every single time, and it says, I can't save this. You're going to have to manually do it."
It's so nice to be able to take advantage of these contracts that we have in place already, right? Copilot's a great example. We are already doing things. Are there ways that we can just leverage the security that we have in place right now? Really, really useful. And a couple of interesting examples of where you have run into blockers and tried to resolve some of them too. I want to go back to something that you had mentioned, Michael, and this was evaluating additional tools. You mentioned, let's ask the question, is this thing that we're evaluating going to do something that our internal or existing tooling can't do today? You had a couple of examples there, and I want to know more about that. So I think you mentioned Lovable. So tell us about how you're using that. What has that done for the team, and a little more around that.
Yeah, I mean there are a lot of ways that people can manage their tasks and their workflow, and um, there have been spreadsheets at organizations and uh, SaaS tools for sure. But with the Lovable license, we had been doing a lot of internal tooling, and one of them was to say, well, I just need a tool that's observing my team, that my team can interact with, task management, but not, it doesn't need to be $100 a month license. can I just create something that my relatively small team can use with that's specific to our needs? Um, and of course, Lovable allows you to do that. I wouldn't say it's production grade, but it's good enough for us to manage teams and uh, manage just having visibility into somebody else's set of tasks and objectives. So this way I can go into a call, into a team call, well prepared to say, well, I see that you've been working on these things. Let's reprioritize this, um, based on how we feel about it.
Shannon and Jonathan, have you run into anything where you're hearing similar things? Maybe there are small gaps that we can use something that we're using today. We don't have to go out and find a new tool. I mean, that report example that you gave is really good, Jonathan. I'm curious if you have run into anything else like that.
Not really. I think the fact that we have access to so many different tools is, at the end of the day, we're an AI first company. So I think Dropbox has done a really good job of getting us access and evaluating these tools. We have a whole separate team that evaluates these tools. So they've done a really good job of giving us access. And also from our end, if theoretically, if there is a tool, right, we can kind of get it approved and kind of go through an evaluation process. But to be honest with you, I haven't really ran into any blockers. I think, like I mentioned before, if anything, it's more of a sometimes we have too many tools and it's a little overwhelming. I'll get on a meeting and someone says, "Hey, I actually use Cursor for this," and then the other person is like, "Well, I use Codex for that." So it's just kind of like, "Oh, well, But I think it's a great thing, right? I think everybody has kind of just found their own groove and has kind of gravitated to their own, just their own tool that fits their workflow best, I guess.
Yeah. I think that it was funny because you talked about that RFP, and we did some research and looked at different RFP tools because we all know those are such a time suck. And nobody's good at like keeping the library, and everybody asks questions in a different way. But the biggest problem we found was that all the teaching you had to do for all of these platforms that you were gonna, that we would buy. And so we kind of just stopped looking, which is why when we got Cowork and it could access, all the documents that we had on our SharePoint drive, that I was like, okay, well, why can't I build something that now will go in and look at all the RFPs? And that's exactly what it did. So it just went, and I put our library of RFPs in, and it said, well, this way I don't have to go in and look at every RFP every time. It started creating an Excel sheet of all of, not even an Excel sheet, but a sheet of all the questions. So it had a library, so it can check the library really quick, as opposed to going in and checking every single document. And then it will also
Mm.
update that document. So we saved the money. Thank God we never went into it. Now I'm sure there's a lot of bells and whistles in these tools. I'm not saying that these RFP tools don't have a lot of other value to them. But for us, that was enough for our needs. So just trying to solve it first, which is, when I said before, like, try and solve it with what we have. And if it doesn't work, then go and we can look at something.
Wow. I mean, that's a great example too. I think everyone can be trying that out with the RFPs that they are looking at today. I want to know about more this team that is evaluating tools for you, Jonathan. So is that really their full-time role?
To be honest with you, I'm not sure, but I know it is like their it is like their responsibility to evaluate these tools. Funny enough, they also kind of took over like the Novatic tool, for example. So everything is very much um, you know controlled, I guess, but everything is evaluated, making sure there's no security flaws or anything. If anything gets flagged, uh, but every once in a while something will pop up about Novatic, for example, and they come to me and I'm like, oh no, that's and I have to kind of calm their fears, right? But no, they're really good about evaluating these things. And I mean, at the end of the day, security is like obviously the main thing that they're watching out for. But yeah, no, we have a whole team based on that, and yeah, no, it's a good thing to have for sure.
I have a
I'm curious
question.
that team.
Like,
Oh no, go ahead, Michael.
no, go ahead, Shannon.
I'm curious because one of the things that I looked at, like I had an interest in, because there was definitely a gap, is so you have that team that looks at the different tools, but do you have a team or even just a single person that
Mhm.
keeps up to date on all of those tools and manages integration type things with all those tools? Like when a new feature is rolled out, like, as for Novatic, I'm the one, right, that will go research and then try and roll it out to the different teams, but also updating settings that need to be updated. And that's become a full-time job for someone,
Mhm.
in a sense, like a go-to-market engineer is what I've seen it called. Does anybody have that role in their company currently?
That's a good question. I'm actually not sure. I mean, it's funny enough because essentially every application has an SME, right? So to your
Hmm.
point, I'm the SME for Novatic. So every time something comes out, we have the Salesforce SME. We have all kinds of different SMEs, but to have someone, that's a really good question. I should probably look into that because so many different updates are coming out all the time. It's overwhelming, right? So
Well, that
Right.
was
And then
similar
how do
to
you
what I
talk to
was
each other?
getting at. That was similar to what I was getting at, Shannon, was where does that function sit? I know that, as a security function, it goes to IT typically. Is it a
Yeah.
RevOps function? Is it a new function? And why I'm curious is because I think we're all kind of facing this. And I think we talked about this at the beginning of the call. How do we centralize or think about who's managing the skills, managing the tools, who's got the overview? And who's responsible for that? Is it an IT function? Is it a new function?
It's not an IT function because they don't necessarily know the business need for it, right?
Right.
IT can look at the security of it, but anytime that like when I wanted to get the MCP connected, they're like, why do you want this?
Hmm.
Right. So I had to justify why
Right.
I needed it. And then they had to make the decision of what they were going to allow or not allow. Um, so it's not an IT function. I think it's just something that we haven't had to think about before. Um,
Could be a new role.
I wanted it to be. I was like, hey guys,
yeah.
I find a new role like every other day that I want to do in the company. But
So what is the SE take on this? Where do we find ourselves? Because everyone's adopting tools like we mentioned before. SEs by nature kind of master are a jack of all trades. We are in contact with a lot of teams internally as well as our customers. So what's our unique angle and how can teams out there and leaders be having the most impact when it comes to making recommendations or the tools that we are working with mostly?
I think as an SE, I know on our team we all have our SE role, but then each of us have like a little specialty, right? I like a lot of the marketing product Novatic stuff, so I kind of lean that way. Some of them also like the more technical, digging into our APIs, on that end, so they'll work with those teams. So as an SE, I think you're, like you said, you're a jack of all trades. We think about things differently, but kind of accomplish it all by having a little specialty on top of that.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, it's at this point, I we spent the last year, maybe the last 6 months, just testing out so many different things. I think for me, it's just not there isn't the perfect tool like we discussed earlier, right? So I think for me, it's really just picking one or two and just getting really, really good at mastering that tool. I mean, at the end of the day, it's we know the giants. They're going to keep getting better and better. They're going to keep getting smarter. AI companies are going to come out. They're always going to have a connector for the specific companies. So it's like no matter what happens, it's we're going to keep getting updates. So for me, it's just don't spend too much time trying to evaluate too much. Just stick to one or two, and really just try to find a workflow and how it adds value to that. So that's kind of what I've have learned the last 6 months. Don't go chase everything, every fancy thing that comes out. Just kind of master one thing and get really, 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 really good at that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a quick reminder, if you are in the chat, we'll be opening up for some audience Q&A in about 10 minutes, but let's kind of look ahead together. What is the one AI use case that you're most bullish on for SE teams as you look ahead over the next 12
Cool.
months?
Agenic AI, agenic SEs. I don't know how I feel about that. About I like the idea, right, of having it as a supporting tool. Like we give a demo and then you send that out. but I'm still not convinced because it's almost like that personal connection, at least for me, is my favorite part of the job, right? Building those relationships. So if I was going to send a demo out and it told you to talk to an agent, I don't know if I like that. Instead, I want to send an interactive demo out to trigger some questions for you to come back to me so I can answer them and help tell the story.
When you think about agentic SEs, tell us what that means to you.
That, I mean, I don't think it will ever replace us, right? Because of the relationship. I think there are people that would like it, right? I don't like picking up the phone. So as much as I want to talk to them, or because it's a prospect I'm trying to sell, I'm trying to build that relationship, I might like that better because I can ask something without having to talk to a person
Mm,
and get on a call, and I can do it on my own time. So for business side in my selling, I don't like it, but maybe on a personal side, I would.
interesting. But let's go back to the AI use case you're bullish on for SE teams, both Jonathan and Michael.
Digital twins. It's similar to Shannon, mixed feelings about it, but the reality is an organization is stronger when it captures institutional knowledge into something that can be shared with other people, at least in the team. Um, Hollywood has been grappling with this digital twin idea for a long time, from the
Yeah.
beginning. And and I know of a company that has a knowledge base that's influenced by everything that is said in Slack, which allows management to understand how the company is thinking and feeling in a way that you couldn't do otherwise. Little, it's a little out there, but it's happening. And so I think there's got to be a place to discuss this digital twin idea, because I like the ability to do that too. If people can access what I'm saying and thinking about the organization offline at their whim, that's helpful. But at the end of the day, Shannon, I would want them to eventually come back to us to do the innovative part, to do the creative part, and to do the relationship part.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think there is going to be a space for that agentic SE, right? Where, but it's for me, it's more going to be more about like a smaller deal, right? If you're just looking to buy 5 licenses or 10 licenses of a product, you can probably go onto a website and talk to an agentic SE, right? But I think for some of those enterprise level deals, that's obviously the NSE is never going to be replaced. To your point, Shannon, it's there. There's always that connection, and I think even on our last call that we had, a couple months back, we talked about how sometimes you get on the phone and you're like agent, agent, because you don't want to
Yes.
you don't want to speak to a bot, all the time. So I think that's never going to be replaced. It's just going to make us more, it's elevate our role to be more advisors. I think for me, I'm more bullish on, and I think we all use AI for to prepare for calls, but I think we're just going to get it's just going to get deeper, right? We're going to go into calls and be prepared for objections and all kinds of different things, right? I also, for me, I support the Latin American region, so I've gotten to a point where I'm also, I get on a call or I get an email and I understand it, but I always will throw it into ChatGPT and say, "Can you explain? Make sure I'm understanding this correctly." And give me, recommendations, and then it'll translate it back into English. So it's, for me, I'm expanding my use case into another language in another region. So for me, it's been very helpful for analyzing that market, which would have taken me so long to do research on that region. So it's there's another for me, it's another use case where it shines.
Yeah, that's great.
How have you found its translation capabilities? I'm actually very curious about that because I would not be able to evaluate it.
That's true.
No, that's a good point. Sometimes, and the funny thing is, one of the caveats with that is every country down there, right, has a different, vernacular, right? They have different, even though they all speak, not all of them, but for the most part, it's Spanish. Like everybody has their own. It's kind of like the U.S., right? Every region has a different dialect. So you definitely have to take the translation and tweak it a little bit. But yeah, no, I mean, for the most part, it's great, but I think sometimes it gets a little too, I don't know what's the word I'm looking for. It gets a little too professional, if that
Wordy?
makes sense. Yeah, wordy, a little, yeah, buzzwords, you know.
Yeah.
So you definitely have to take it, make it your own, and obviously don't take
You can't
straight.
say make it sound like me because it doesn't know how to use
Exactly.
natural
Yeah.
language.
Right. 100%.
That's a good tooltip though, Shannon. Make it sound like
Yeah.
me. I think is a
Oh
pretty
yeah.
useful prompt overall for anyone who's never tried that.
Yeah.
Let's go to some audience questions for a bit. So again, if anyone's listening and has something that they'd like to ask the panel, please drop it in the chat. We have a question from Meredith. Have you found a good way to measure AI success beyond time saved, like better deal quality, better prep, or stronger team performance?
Better prep, key, and better presentations. So when you say like measure, I don't know how you would you come into a deal better prepared. Like Jonathan said, I can do better research. When I prep for a demo now, one of the things I throw in there is, can you see why now? Why are they looking for our type of software now? And so it can search news and LinkedIn posts and things like that. Um, I don't know. I don't know how to measure that. So yeah, that's now you stumped me. But yeah, I'm gonna go back and ask Claude how I can measure.
Yeah.
Sure, it'll give me a ring.
Yeah. I think it's still pretty early on, right? For for measuring those kind of things, but I think, yeah, I think it's going to get better and better. Um, so the Launchpad use case, we're in the process of getting it connected to Salesforce so that we can tie opportunities to demos now. Not sure if you guys have tested that or have gotten it in place, but that's something that I'm really excited about, and I'm sure it's going to trickle down into the MCP and be able to pull more metrics out of that. So theoretically, I should be able to say, hey, did this opportunity have an Nevadic? Did it change the
Yeah.
outcome? Things of that nature. But I think it's going to trickle down for sure.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. Too early to tell, and too early to figure out how we're going to measure that. But it is going to be very important very soon.
So if someone out there can figure it out, write a great blog post about it, we'll all be reading.
There you go.
We got a question from Nico. What near-term AI workflows do you see as game changers with Claude or other tools for SEs? I think we've had a couple of good examples so far, but please, what other game changers are you guys sitting on?
Oh, I don't know whether it's necessarily for SEs. It depends on how your role is situated, but we have some younger AEs. And when I was talking earlier about the deck that I helped him prepare, like being able to have the SE come in and help drive a better presentation, a more professional, a more, all of the decks, all the proposal decks, we all know it's a lot of generic information. So being able to take their use cases and cater the message towards their business, I think that's going to give a better proposal because it's going to be more targeted towards them. So that's one that I want to build into my skill. I haven't done that one yet, to be able to have a base presentation and what I want to include in that proposal. Again, it's not usually under me, but I was just trying to help a younger AE with something.
I did something similar actually with an SE who needed two things. One, he was based in India, and two, he was kind of new to it. Um, Help with messaging is obviously an
Mm.
easy one to check the box on, but it does make a big difference to have him or her more well prepared before I do any sort of coaching with them. The other one was cultural understanding. Especially maybe Jonathan, you experienced this too, is the cultural differences can be dramatic between how we do business here in the United States versus other places and even across different parts of the United States. So what he and I did was put together a briefing on American business which was very insightful for me too, because there were several things that I took for granted, like the fact that we want to be efficient with our time and where we flatten the hierarchy a little bit more than other countries might do.
Mhm.
Um, those were insightful even to me to kind of get out of my own taking it for granted sort of way. So
What, yeah.
training, I think training and shaping your SEs with these tools could be helpful.
What about this is kind of something I was wondering if you guys had a way to do, there's so much documentation that is just internal facing. And when you need to request it to be customer facing and maybe again, but to
Mm,
their scenario, their use case, we used to have to call marketing, put a ticket in, and it takes, a week, 2 weeks, depending on your marketing team. So I just did one, about an integration and concurrency. And I was like, just make this customer facing. And it did, but who's reviewing those? Right? Because we can make a million documents now just like that, and they look incredible. Who's like, there's the security of the data that's going in and out, but who's monitoring that and making sure that what you're sending out to a customer is accurate and what we want to be presenting if you give everybody this freedom?
That's a
yeah.
question that doesn't have an easy answer. But
No.
Jonathan, you might have something.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say you just gave me so I was on a webinar last month and we needed kind of a breakdown of one of our pricing plans and I couldn't find anything and so I just went into ChatGPT and created it. And
Yeah.
it I mean it looked like it was created by marketing so I was like this
Amazing.
is great. Yeah. But funny enough, now you just gave me an idea where
Mm.
I get asks all the time specifically from the Latin American region where they say, "Hey, can you send me a breakdown of the plans?" And we just sometimes we just don't have it in Spanish, and so you just gave me a great idea of like why don't I just start creating those assets using some of these tools, obviously verifying that
Yeah.
it's all correct and make sure it's all approved. But yeah, that's another workflow that I'm very interested in now.
Yeah. I
I
love that
definitely
one.
I see that pre-sales role having changed to do a lot more of that these days because we have tools at our disposal. It can certainly save us a lot of time. It actually
Mhm.
sharpens our attention to detail. That's what I find because you have to go really thoroughly and make sure that anything that's being generated is accurate. And you got to trust your
Yep.
instinct. You got to trust your own product knowledge and your testing to make sure that you're actually getting the right things in front of customers.
But you're also
100%.
overloading people because I was like sending these one pages and I was like, hey guys, all excited. I'm like, well, how do you think this looks? And I would send it off to the product team and the engineering team. And then I wouldn't get a response. And I realized I don't want to read a 2-page document.
No.
Right. So what I started doing was kind of going through and just taking the pieces that I just wanted them to verify and bringing that to them as opposed to sending a whole 2-page document. I think there's even been some memes out there about like nothing's worse than being given an AI created document and asked to review it.
Yeah.
100%. That's why I've gotten into the habit where it's like if I get some output and it's just too wordy or too long, I'm like, summarize this, just give me the juicy parts. Don't, so but yeah, it's funny because it's yeah, same boat.
Yeah. I tell people to, I was talking with someone that they were showing me a presentation they made, and I'm like, these presentations are amazing. You're generating a 15 slide presentation, but nobody wants to look at a 15-page presentation. So the content's great, but I told her, I'm like, put a summary on the first slide. This is all the things that this is proving. And if you want to dive into the way that I'm presenting and how I'm proving it, then you can go into the slides, but make sure you put that summary at the beginning.
Yep.
We are touching on a couple of great practicalities and we're nearly at time. So let's go around the house one more time and I'll give you the chance to share either a takeaway from today or a parting thought for everyone who's listening in. So why don't we start with you, Jonathan?
Yeah, I think for me, like I said 2 minutes ago, I think the asset creation is something that just really like sparked something in me. So that's probably my biggest takeaway. And now I have a project to work on for the rest of the quarter. So that's going to be, thanks for that, Shannon.
Look out for some new assets.
Exactly. Yep.
Michael, what about you?
Well, we were talking about how you evaluate these tools and how you evaluate the situation. And one of those is, for me, it's where's the team spending time not with a customer? How can we make that, whatever's happening there, more effective toward us getting us in front of the customer? Because we're all saying it, that the relationship with the customer, at least in the enterprise level and really at all levels, is the most important aspect of what we're doing anyway. So if we can find ways to support that and reduce the time that's not being spent with customers, I think that's an important metric to think through.
We'll put on that lens of making sure that we're spending as much time as possible on the customer and automating the stuff that we're doing outside of that. Shannon, let's finish it off on your side.
So the thing I'm most excited about is the reports that Jonathan talked about. So I'm stealing that. Being able to generate those and send those off. But I think my advice to everyone who's just afraid, hasn't tried, just go in and play, right? Go in and be like, ask AI, can you do this? Like, think of something that you, whether it be something you wanted to do, you have ideas about, or that takes you forever, it's the piece of your job. Statement of work. I hate statement of work. So I started building out a skill to say, okay, tell me which deals I need an SE on for that statement of work. Because some are very basic. We can just ask the questions and be done. So I started building a skill out for that. So just get in there and play. And revise, revise, revise. It's always a living thing. So I think that's my best advice for everyone moving forward.
Nice. That's great advice from everyone. And we are just about at time. So I'll give another big thank you to the panelists, Shannon, Michael, and Jonathan. It's been great to chat with you today about transformation through AI and what teams can look forward to today in the world of SEs in 2026. Thanks again for Nevadic for getting us together. I've been Matthew James, and thanks for listening in. I hope you all have a great day wherever you are. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.